Hello and welcome to a Monday night edition, and I do mean Monday night in Tallahassee. The daylight savings time has gone away, and it's almost dark here in Tallahassee. But we are back with another edition of the Osceola Seminoles Sidelines, and I'm joined tonight by former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva from Nashville, and a very, very busy Bob Ferrante from just down the road in Clarn. And Bob has had a very busy day. He had the press conference and FSU press conference, and then hit the women's basketball game. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And Kurt, who normally joins us on Monday, is actually at the Civic Center as the men. Is it they still call it the Civic Center, or they call it something else now? But it's called the Tuck. It's called the Tuck.
Yeah, we like Tuck. It's easy.
He's at the Tuck getting ready to cover the men's basketball game against Northern Kentucky, I believe. So got several sports to talk about. It couldn't have gotten in here any quicker, but we are going to continue to talk about the sport that we love with the same old situation every Monday night. And Florida State, as we all well know, dropped to 1-8, finished ACC play 1-7 with a 35-11 loss against North Carolina. I know Bob and I have had a chance to rewatch it. We'll share some of our thoughts. Mark, I don't know if you've had a chance to rewatch it, but Bob, I'll start with you. Obviously, we have not talked to you since the game ended. Just tell us, obviously, your thoughts from what it was like at the stadium. It seemed to be less than enthusiastic, at least later in the game as the game got going. It seemed to be not much energy in the building, on the field, or in the stands.
Yeah, I don't know whether to laugh or cry or be sarcastic or how to report or react with this team. It's become kind of challenging to come up with stories and describe it. Are we supposed to praise what they do well as far as kicking and punting and converting on fourth downs? Like, this team really owns fourth downs. The problem is they have to play a first down, a second down, and a third down. They can't be successful on those downs. I don't really know. I think what frustrates me watching them, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, I can acknowledge that Miami and Clemson are better this year and that Florida State's going to have a tough matchup with those types of teams. But when you go up against a Duke and North Carolina, you expect a competitive matchup, a good game. You expect Florida State knows that the run game is coming at it. I think you guys addressed this Saturday. You know what is coming. You should be prepared. You should have that physicality brought to the table. I know we're going to talk about what Mike Norvell said today, but questioning the physicality of this team began Saturday in game, and it continued Monday with the press conference. So it's a lot of things that you just hate to see 9 games into the year. I was with Mac Brown for a little bit in their interview room post game on Saturday, and he's praising the development of his offensive line. He's praising a third string quarterback making progress. What a 220-pound running back is doing, the improvements he's seeing on his team. And I'm kind of thinking back to walking to the press box thinking, we're not seeing any improvements out of this Florida State team. It's not the natural progression of football that you tend to see going into November.
Yeah, I agree with you. And listen, this is unfortunately, it's a soft football team. I mean, there's no other way around it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that they quit collectively in this game, but one of my takeaways was the same as you, Bob. You knew what you were getting coming into this game. You knew they were going to run the ball, probably a little bit more successful passing the ball early in the game than I thought they could be. But the most demoralizing thing to me is you knew that Omari Hampton was going to get the ball a ton of times. You knew exactly where that ball was going, and no one could stop him. I mean, they had a little bit of success early. But listen, as Mark will tell us, running games most good teams run the ball well, get better as the game goes on because you start to wear down the other team. And listen, I don't think I've seen a running back that Florida State has played that ran as hard and as low and as behind his pads that Omari Hampton did. And the one thing that FSU's defense will not do, particularly linebackers and DBs, they will not play behind their pads. They will not get after people. It was embarrassing for those guys on tape, some of them. I don't think that – I'm not going to say they quit collectively as a group on either side of the ball. But, listen, it's the same old same every weekend. 3rd and 4, you play in bell coverage. AZ Thomas runs 7 yards behind the line to gain. Receiver stops. It's happened multiple weeks. That's coaching. The message is clearly not getting through. That I think, listen, the offense is what it is. And we've talked about that. Even when they made the quarterback change, that was not, it was only going to help you see what you had in those two guys, because the offensive line is just, it's a mess. They can't block. They haven't gotten, to your point, Bob, they haven't gotten better. And it's your two most experienced guys. Now, I understand they're on islands, but they're giving up way too many pressures and sacks at tackle. And listen, the receivers are not getting open. Same old there. But yeah, I was more disappointed in the defense probably than I was anything else, because they knew it was coming and couldn't stop it. My only, going back and watching the game, my only disappointment in the offense was, and I've said this multiple times now, and I wrote about it last week, is when Jordan Travis was in the early stages of his development, Mike did a lot of half rolls, boots to give him half field reads and allow him to make quick decisions. And he needs to do that for these two guys, because one, and they did a couple times, but not near as much as I thought they would do. I think they do need to do that. They need to take some pressure off the offensive line. It gives these guys an option to run or pass. And obviously they don't get time to read the whole field behind that offensive line. And these receivers are not getting open and drop back pass situations. So, that was kind of my takeaway. But you just got manhandled by there. Listen, we've talked about it. If an offense this season that Florida State has played is good at any one thing, Florida State gets decimated by that one thing. Now, the only team they've beaten is a team that's not very good on offense, and that's Cal. Mark, what are your thoughts after having 48 hours to kind of marinate about Florida State's performance?
We were all here talking about the micro, talking about the things everybody can see.
Mark, you got something going on with your your microphone. You're kind of breaking up on us.
Can you not hear me?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah, good? You're good. You're good now. You're good now. Sorry.
We're all sitting here talking about the micro on everything. And a blind man can see the offensive line's not very good. A blind guy can see the receivers can't get separation and can't get off a jam. We can see the tackling. We can see all that stuff. And as I sit here and reflect, not just on last week, but in the previous weeks, you can't help but say, where the failure happened in the offseason. The evaluation of these players, these guys, they thought they had something they didn't have, or they were in a place that they're not. There are a lot of assumptions made about who could do what and what would be the best way to accentuate the talents that they have. And I've never seen such a clear miss on everything. Things that were, look, in 2021, we saw incremental improvement on that football team all the way. It peaked to crescendo last year. And so, what's different?
Mike, adjust your microphone again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
That's all right.
Is that better?
No, I still got a lot of reverb. There's not really reverb. It's just kind of staticky.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me switch things.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep on talking. Mark will be back with us in a second. Live shows, we have some technical difficulties. But yeah, but going back to what we were talking about, what I was talking about, yeah, I just, and what Mark's talking about, yeah, even Mike said today, Bob, that he was shocked at where this program is. And, of course, I think he's certainly not the only one. I think the whole entire college football world's in shock. Every time I get a call or text from somebody that works in football or, knows football, it's always, how in the world can Florida State be 1-8 under any circumstances? So, so Mark will be back with us in a second. But, I'm he's right. I mean, a lot of things were misevaluated, and I think Alex Atkins talked a little about his misevaluations today. Good, even I don't know what he was talking about. He was not very specific. We did not hear that from Mike, but it was Mark. You back with us? Nope. All right. Mark will be back with us in a second. But, listen, Bob, I do want to ask you a question, Bob. You were, I don't know if you were in the press conference or in the press box, but, Mike got asked, the longer the season goes, the more pointed questions he is getting. And, he got asked, I don't remember what the question was, but it was essentially, are you the right guy to fix this? And he was very emphatic and went on really what was he took over the press conference, and I don't know how long the answer was, but it was about as long an answer as I can remember him giving to any one question. I don't guess there's any he answered the question that he was answered, but he doubled down pretty hard on he was the right guy and went over his past and said he'd been through this before. Now, I have not gone back to see if he's ever been through anything like this before. I don't think he has. The only thing I will say about that, and, everybody's talking about the fact that he turned this program around once when he took over from Willie. Well, when he did that, he had the new car smell to him. He was new. He was a breath of fresh air for the Florida State football program, and now he's going to have to clean up his own mess. I think we won't know the answer to Mark. You back with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better, much better.
Okay, good.
And of course, we won't know the answer to this until next year. But I think it's fair to question whether he is the right guy to lead this program back out of what basically he and his staff have created, both on the field and off. But Mark, go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I'd never seen a situation where the evaluations were just so off, and that's what. There's no quick fix here. I mean, we have regressed so much, and the only thing that's going to change that is these players from the level they're at now. The ones that we have that stay have to develop really fast and get better really fast, because I think there's some talent in the younger guys. I'm sure retaining those guys, and then we got to find some quick fixes out there, whether it's freshmen or which is rare. Real difference makers, or portal. I mean, and there's no quick fix, and so to sit here and break down the micro and say, well, we can't block, we can't do this. That's obvious, and that's not going to get fixed anytime soon. And I hate to say it, but it's depressing. It's just depressing that it was such a miss.
Yeah, well, what we were talking about while you were fixing your technical difficulties, and I want to go back to Bob on this. What did you think of those comments, Bob? I want to get your comments too, Mark, on what Mike was when he doubled down and how emphatic he was when he doubled down. I mean, he talked about the fact that he had rebuilt a program. He'd been through something like this before. I don't recall it in his coaching career, but I have not gone back further than Pitt. And obviously he was, when he took over the Memphis program was pretty damn good under Justin Fuentes and Tommy West before that. So he has not rebuilt a program as a head coach prior to Florida State. But just your thoughts on what he said after the game.
Yeah, I think he's being very generic and trying to focus on his history, which there's a reason why the Arizona State OC job became the Memphis head coaching job, became the Florida State head coaching job. And he's saying, look at my track record. You look at his stats from Memphis, they're quite impressive what he was able to do. I think the thing that I would argue is the personnel is far different. He's never had the tight ends. He's never been able to recruit the tight ends who are blockers in the kind of scheme that Mike Norvell wants to run, for example. He hasn't been able to pull in and retain those high-end offense made for playmaker type of receivers that made him special at Memphis. Has he had some runners that are dynamic? I wouldn't say Trey Benson is super dynamic. He's just had those kind of chunky runs through the years. He hasn't had the Darrell Henderson types. Yeah. He had Jordan Travis, truly a game-changing offense, and a quarterback who makes your offense so multiple and dynamic that it, like we've talked about, it changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
We don't see Mike Norvell giving up play calling, but he needs better advising. I can't recall if you guys talked about this on Saturday, or if it was on another show I've listened to, but who is Mike Norvell getting advice from? Is he getting good advice? Yeah. I mean, I think you guys did address it. Who's he getting advice from? Is it good advice? Is it good advice on game days? Is it good advice Monday through Friday, building that game plan, building a good script? I don't quite look, we don't see it on the field on game days. I think that's the easy answer, is whatever he thinks he's getting that he thinks might be appropriate for that opponent, it's not showing up in the right way.
Well, I think they have to be more creative with this offense because it's got so many deficiencies, and whether it's formations, I've talked about the need to get the quarterbacks out of the pocket to get them away from at least two defenders, all those kind of things. But you just
it's not necessarily being creative, Pat. It's doing what these guys can do. It's using what these players have. I mean, and that goes back to my previous point about they built a plan in the off season around what they thought they had, to which they don't, which thinking these guys could do things that they can't. And I think we're saying the same thing. We need to get creative, but we need to put these guys in positions that do things that they can do. And I'm not with these guys every day. I don't know what that is, but at this point, this team is so beat down. It's there's we got 3 games left. I don't know what you can do at this point. It really is.
Try to get through it, I think, is the only thing you can do.
I mean, I think that's where everybody is at this point. I know that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm still going I'm going to go in next week with a little bit of hope, and that maybe something magical can happen. And we've seen it happen before, but this team does have ability. It has some strengths, but we just can't seem to get to it, and for whatever reason. And I agree with you, Bob. And we talked about this Saturday night. Who are the voices offensively in that room that Mike listens to, that he relies on? Is he the sole voice? I don't know. I don't know what the dynamics are, and who has a say, and who listens. Who does Mike trust? It seems to me he needs a veteran guy that knows offense, that has designed plays and has called games. Even if Mike is the guy calling it, he needs somebody there that can check him on his crazy ideas or whatever. You need somebody that you don't need a bunch of yes men in the room. I don't know if that's what he has, but it feels like he needs some help in that regard, and I don't see where he's getting it.
Yeah, the thing that surprises me, I think outside of Atkins, everyone had been with him before, right? David Johnson had been with him at Memphis, if I recall correctly. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Tokarts had been there. He obviously played for Thomas, and he was at Arizona. Thompson was at Arizona State. So that that's where obviously he didn't know Dugans before he got here. That's baffling to me. And to Chad, to answer your question, I don't think Mike's going to bring in a play caller. I think he's going to might bring in somebody with some new ideas if he decides that. Listen, there's going to be somebody. There's going to be at least one coach new on offense. I mean, I don't know what his plans are as far as how much turnover he's going to have in the program. I mean, obviously, some of it he's going to be forced to do unless he wants to challenge the people that have power, and that doesn't help him long term. But I don't think I think he may incorporate some of the offensive philosophies that any offensive coach that he brings in has, coming from a previous destination. But I do not see Mike saying, "Hey, I'm handing the offense over to you, and I'm going to be the CEO of this program." Mike is young; he's energetic. That usually does not happen as coaches get older. I don't see that happening. What do you guys think about Mike giving up the play calling duties, guys?
No, I mean, look, Mike's not a bad play caller. Right? You can see what he's trying to do. The problems come in the inability to execute the play that's called, and I think that's maybe where he can check himself a little bit. And to my previous point about let's find some things these guys can do well. I mean, we said that in the very first couple games. And play calling's a little overrated anyways. The game is essentially called when you go into it. I mean, you have you script the first little bit of it, and you have your situations that you have, what you're going to do in certain situations, certain looks, certain areas of the field. So, play calling's a little overrated sometimes, but the ability to adjust, the ability to game plan and all that stuff. I mean, I don't think he's a bad play caller, and I don't know that he necessarily needs to give it up, but they definitely need to do something different. But again, like I said, you can see some of the things they're trying to do. When you run an RPO and the receiver can't get off the jam and the quarterback has to hold it, I don't know what you do. Right? Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, that's
even Murphy wants the Florida State football talk to go, and she is barking at me.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Bob.
I've been kicking this around too. I mean, Mike Norvell has surrounded himself with people that he trusts. I mean, Chris Thompson's been a head coach.
Yep.
Likely called plays at some point in his career as an assistant. Rick Stockstill is on the support staff. Somebody was a head coach, called a lot of plays.
Yep.
I'm curious, and again, this is purely speculative because we don't talk to those guys on the regular in season. Mike Norvell's put him on the payroll. How do you have those conversations? Do you have big picture conversations about self-scouting? What are our deficiencies as an offense, as a defense, as a program? How much of a voice does a Rick Stockstill have in this discussion? I think Chris Thompson is somebody that, we've talked about this. Mike Norvell trusts implicitly, has got a relationship for 20 to 25 years. He's got him here for a reason. I would think Mike Norvell is leaning on those two at the very, very least for these kind of big picture self-scouting type of conversations about the offense.
Yeah, I would hope that he is using Rick as an evaluator of his staff. Rick, what do you see? What do you see that we're not teaching well? What do you see that we do teach well? What do you see in individual players? Because you're right, Rick's been around a long time, was that long time head coach at Middle Tennessee, which is a hard place to sustain success with. And he did it for, I think he was there 15, 17 years, something like that. Probably should still be there based on what's going on up there this year. They probably should have kept him around. But yeah, I think that, you got to hope that Mike would utilize that knowledge, that experience. And, listen, I think that obviously one of the things that I think he could count on from Rick that maybe you could not count on from somebody else coming into the program as an analyst is Rick's got the best interest of Florida State in mind because he is a Florida State guy. There is no personal agenda. I don't know that Rick would want to come back and be an on-the-field coach at this point in his career. I think he might, I don't see that. I mean, I never ask him. I talk to him occasionally at practice. But, yeah, Mark, how much do you think he tries to, or how much, if you were in Mike's shoes, would you lean on a guy like Rick Stockstill?
Yeah, no, you try to use everybody in the building if you can. It'd be silly not to with the amount of experience that Rick has, from all the time he was at Clemson and then as a head coach. And the same thing with Thompson. So, I mean, I'm talking about things I don't really know too much about, but I can tell you that the product on the field is just, it's stale. And I think part of it too, at this point, are the kids hearing the voices of the coaches?
We started talking about that a while ago. Yep.
I mean, you just, you get to this point and it's, the same old thing that has been worked is not working right now. I mean, so different voices seem to be needed. Maybe I don't. Look, the answers are not easy answers.
No.
But golly, man, we're going to run out of time really fast. I mean, we're out of time. I mean, this thing's got to get turned around. Right now.
And we've talked about he's going to have to go so heavy in the portal to get this done. I know everybody talks about those good young players, and maybe they will be, maybe they won't be. We don't know. They haven't played enough yet. But just like, do you really know what you have in both young quarterbacks other than we know Brock Glenn is tough as nails because you watch that 50-yard completion and he knows he's going to get lit up from the time he sets his feet to the time he lets go of that ball. I think, and Mike got asked, or I think Mike or Alex got asked today, how do you make an evaluation on these kids? And we kind of got a coach speak type answer. I know what they're supposed to be looking at. I know when the ball is supposed to be released, but it's not all on them. Some of it's on them. I mean, I don't know what he's gonna say. I mean, I really don't. Like these I think they need to shorten these press conferences, and the less it's said at this point in the season, the better, because all they're doing is setting themselves up for scrutiny with everything they say. Like Alex Atkins saying that one of the issues on the offensive line is all the distractions that people have to deal with in today's modern college football world. Like the other 133 schools don't have to deal with the same thing. And last year, rotation, 7 and 8 guys playing was great. Now it's screwing everything up on communication and all of that. But yeah, I think the less said at these press conferences moving forward, the better. But listen, I think, and going back to this game, I made a couple of notes in my original watching the game on Saturday night. The one thing that frustrates me about this team is when they have a chance to leverage some momentum, they just can't. They don't do it. I mean, you go back to several games, but in this game in particular, you scored to make it a 10-point game, and then you give up a 43-yard run and a 15-yard penalty on top of that because Florida State doesn't want to tackle anybody in the secondary. And so you get 15 yards tacked on. All of a sudden, it's 28-11, and that was good night, Irene, for this football team. And there were others. I mean, you had them. You get a 4th and 1 stop, and I think they drove far enough downfield that you didn't get a short field for your offense. The offense didn't do anything with it. I mean, I don't expect this offense to move 99 yards. I mean, I don't. I mean, they were lucky to get it out far enough that they could punt, to be honest with you, without putting Mastromano too far back in the end zone. But, listen, you stop somebody on 4th and 1, you got to hope that you move the ball far enough to flip the field. And I think they ended up getting a 51-yard punt out of Mastromano, which was not bad. But they just don't leverage any momentum that they get, and it's been a sticking point all year, for this football team. It's not the only time we've seen it.
Yeah. The whole thing about that scenario, Pat, was seeing Mike run to the defensive huddle before after we scored, and you see him going right here. This is the moment. This is it. Make a play that will stop him here. We got to go. You know what I mean? And had just imploring the defense to make a stop right there. And your favorite term, complimentary football. I've heard Mike say it a couple of times now.
That's right. I think he's a fan of the show.
Yeah, whatever. I guarantee you, if he's listening to us, he's got bigger problems. But and then right out of the gate, 42-yard run. So I mean, it goes back to something we said Saturday night too, right? Where's the leadership on this team? Who's going to put this team on their back? Who's going to make that play? Who can we depend on to make that play when it needs to be made? And in the past, it's been Jordan Travis, it's been Kalen DeLoach, it's been Jared Verse, it's been any number of guys, and there's just nobody to do that right now, and that was an issue that we identified going into the year. Who were going to be the leaders on this team? Who's the person you can rely on? And some of the names we threw out there, they're just not that guy. I mean, that's an issue too. So what do you do now moving forward in the off season to cultivate that, to identify those people and make sure that those are the voices that are being listened to, and maybe not the wrong voices being listened to in the locker room. Those are things too, and it's that as much as anything, I think, is just as big a reason for the issues that we're seeing now as anything. There's not that bell cow. There's not that grown man to grab people by the throat and say, let's get it done, and I'll lead. I'll be the guy. We don't have that guy.
Well, I think listen, I think good teams probably have that. I think bad teams don't. And listen, is that a byproduct of the portal era where everybody NIL, where everybody's trying to get paid, so they're only worried about themselves? I don't know. I would think even on a good football team, you've got some of that, but they play together for that particular season, knowing that they're all better served by team success. But yeah, listen, I agree. I think you mentioned that. I've talked about this before in Takeaway Tuesdays. The message is not getting through. Listen, I heard Marcus Freeman talk today, Notre Dame's head coach, in his press conference. Just about everyone is shocked with what the win-loss column says for Florida State. Now, whether it's coach speak or not, and listen, we've heard guys that don't have any reason to use coach speak talk about the talent level of some of the guys on Florida State's football teams. And if that is the and you've talked about young talent, Mark, and we know that there's some guys on defense particularly has got more talent than the offense. Whether it's on well, maybe not on the second level of the defense, but certainly defensive line and secondary, and they're just not getting it done. I mean, you watch the arm tackles and but listen, that's reinforced in practice. We watch the figure 8 drill all the time. And I've watched the video because it's posted every day by some site. It's put up on Twitter. And you see coaches reinforcing, what a great job. What a great job. Go patting them on the head after they're grabbing them with their arms. And that's not how you play football. And, I heard Mike talk about missed tackles today, or Adam talk about one of KJ Clerkland's missed tackles. He just got to learn how to make that tackle. Well, he didn't use technique. When you tackle somebody, you step on their toes. You don't stop moving your feet 2 yards from getting to them. You step on their toes and you put your top of your hat through their face mask on bottom of their face mask and in their chest. And that's why he missed the tackle. Because he didn't use proper technique and he wasn't physical. And listen, I've said this before, and thank God I actually heard somebody ask the question today, can you practice more physical? And I don't think anybody knows what the actual rules are for NCAA practice, but you've got to, this team, even for next year, your young kids, they're not going to get 15 bowl practices. I would make that next open week after this week, I'd make it like a spring practice for my young guys. And Adam's talked about how they've incorporated some new tackling drills. Bob, you would know better than I do whether that's true or not. But I see the same drills over and over again. But yeah, I just so to your point, either they're coaching or they're allowing it to happen at this point, and it's not getting corrected to the point where these kids are they're still making the same mistakes time after time after time. Go back to that 3rd and 4 where AZ has got to know that you don't, and the only way I could think that he would bail past the line to gain, knowing that they're most of the time you're going to all they wanted was 4 yards. They didn't want to go, they weren't going for a home run ball. They had not thrown a home run ball all day. I don't know why he would drop back. Well, either that's being coached or it's being allowed. And if that's being coached, this is a mistake, because that's football 101. I don't know how to coach the secondary, but I know on 3rd and 4, you're not dropping 7 yards behind the line to gain. And he started waving like he needed help. Well, it was man-to-man coverage. I think there is some of that. It's frustrating because, as I said before, it's their job to get through these kids, and it's not happening. Especially if they're as talented as everybody says that they are.
And they might be talking, but the message might not be received.
Yes.
And I don't know. I'll be very curious. Nobody cares about this, but I'm just saying I'll be very curious. A lot of NFL scouts at some of these games, not the UNC game in particular, but if you're an NFL scout, how do you evaluate AZ Thomas? That's a guy who potentially is a first, second round type of pick. Now, he hasn't put it out there every game. I understand that. How does the NFL evaluate a guy like AZ is a question I would put out there, because it hasn't looked good consistently. He's not a great tackler. Obviously, the issues with Shaheem. Ventrell was honestly a really good run defending corner at Virginia. It's almost like he's regressed here. If you go back and look at what he showed at Virginia to what he's shown here, it's not showing up. So I'll be curious how many of these guys are invited to the NFL combine, how they're evaluated, and eventually where they are drafted.
Well, I will say this, and just talk to what you guys have talked about talent, what everyone else says. Marcus Freeman said they're as talented as any team. That might be the most talented team athletically, I'm assuming, is what he was talking about, and maybe even physically with some guys like Farmer and Jackson, as they will see all year. Now, they have not played a hellacious schedule this year at Notre Dame, but nevertheless, we've heard that from and I will say this, I was at practice last Wednesday, and there were about 5 to 7 scouts there. And that's been consistent. That was consistent in the preseason. They haven't stopped coming, Bob. So they're coming for a reason. NFL teams do not waste their money sending scouts to schools where they're not players. Like when I was at South Florida, I was there for 7 years. We had years where we might see a scout a week. And the year we had JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, and we had 9 guys on that defense, I think, that would end up playing NFL football. They were in our offices every week, every day.
Right.
So clearly the NFL thinks there's some scouts there. Some NFL scouts think there's some players there that can play football at Florida State, which is even a more damning indictment on what's going on on the coaching side of things. Now, I don't know. Are they all coming to look at the same kid, or are they looking at 10 kids? I don't know that. I know that they're looking at AZ. I would think they're looking at Daryl Jacklin, Josh Farmer, Pat Payton, to a lesser extent, maybe Marvin Jones Jr. I think they're probably looking at a little bit at Lawrence Toafili. Outside of that, I can't imagine they're looking at, unless they're starting to evaluate underclassmen. But to me, if there wasn't talent here, these NFL guys would not keep coming back on a daily and weekly basis. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, like you said, that's a bigger indictment on the product that we're seeing on the field. If some of these players are that highly regarded, again, and that goes to, what are they doing? They're looking at potential. Scouts are looking at potential. And, Bob Harbison, the old Codger football coach, when I first showed up at Florida State, I remember one time, I think Wayne or somebody told me as a freshman that I had some potential, and Harbison looks at me, hey, buddy, don't get too happy. You know what that means? It means you ain't done shit yet.
Yeah.
So, and it's players not playing up to their potential, not straining their potential is obviously, because this is not the first time we've heard this about this group from other coaches and other people outside the program about how talented they are. And I think that's the thing that is just so baffling, is that this is the same group of guys that took a group and made them better incrementally over the course of 2 or 3 years. And it goes back to my first point, that to miss so bad on your personnel and come up with the plan that they have had in terms of scheme, in terms of how they were going to approach the year and do things, and who's going to play where and all that stuff, putting the pieces in the right places. They just missed so bad on all of it, because I think we just talked about how there's a lot of guys on this team that have potential. I guarantee you they're not looking at as many guys on pick the team that we played outside of Miami, who's going to have that, more guys than us probably even be looked at by an NFL team. And that's that's just so, again, it's mind boggling how bad these guys play. And so, and look, it goes down to the, straining your potential and attitude and effort. Those things go a long way in this game, a long way. You can't fake it. We talked about it Saturday night. You get exposed if you loaf. You get exposed if you don't give 100%. You get exposed if you're not all bought in.
Yep.
And so I think there's a little bit of all of that along the line. And I'm not calling any one particular person out. I just think it's just permeated. But you say, well, that's the NIL era. Well, every team's got NIL. I mean, Miami's got a crap ton of NIL guys too, and they're undefeated and they look pretty good right now. The quarterback's a first-year quarterback, right? And he's the leader on that team. They rally around that guy. That guy put the team on his back and boat race Duke in the second half. We don't have that guy. We had that guy and he broke his leg. But but it doesn't have to be that position. It could be a position group. My hope is the offensive line would be that group. And it turns out it's not. So like I said before, the miss is just so baffling to me. How bad it got. I can't. 1-9 is just. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. I just can't.
It should.
Nobody can.
It should not, under any circumstances, no matter how much college football changes, Florida State University should never be 1-9. Never be 1-9. And we are looking at a season where their only win, outside of Cal, may be against Charleston Southern, who is a 1-8 FCS football team. And I will wait for 2 weeks to go off on my tangent about FBS versus FCS matchups, only to say, are we going to put an asterisk on the record book when they go 2-10, that one of them was an FCS program, because these games should not be played. But long story short, listen, even Mike said today that he was shocked by the 1-loss record. And let's talk a little bit about that, because, he was probably less coach speak when asked about potential changes and his evaluation of the program moving forward. And he says, I can tell you that there's going to be a change in what we've seen from this year to this next year coming up. I'm aware of where we are, the things that have happened, some of the things that I'm evaluating throughout the course of the season, evaluating over the course of the last few years of, one, why did this happen? Why have we come up short? And then what are the issues and what can be done, changed, addressed, all of that. That's going to allow us to make a monumental step here this next year and for the future of the program. I do believe in the guys that are in the locker room, do believe in the potential of what we have. We have to do a better job of making sure that the application of the things that we work, the things that we train, the things that we do, the evaluation of the positions, we're putting guys in, and sometimes those guys that we have, we can improve that. All these factors are going to continue to be evaluated. When you hear that, Mark, what do you say? What do you think?
Well,
that's a mouthful, I know.
Yeah, well, the time for evaluation is over. I mean, the evaluation is done. The product is what it is. Now it's time for execution. And to Mike's credit, I mean, if he has done it before, he did it here. He might have to do it with a different group with him. But look, I mean, the window is small. I mean, he's got to show some improvement. We got to show a pulse in the next 3 games somehow, some way, and I think that's got to be a priority. Because you can't go into December recruiting, signing day portal, so you got to figure out a way to win 2 of these next 3, whichever they are. You got to show something. The evaluation is done as far as that part goes. You better figure out a way to win a couple of ball games, because there's enough talent to win. Let's face it. 2 out of these next 3. If Lagway's out, and we got Charleston Southern, Notre Dame. That's a big ask, but weirder things have happened. I mean, you got to show something here these next 3.
Yeah, William is the most positive guy. William McMillan has FSU 27, Notre Dame 19. I don't think William's picked against Florida State this year. He's the most positive Florida State fan I think we have listening to the show. Bert Bertoli wants to know, is 2025 quarterback 1 on this roster? Well, I'll tell you what my opinion is if he's not on this roster, neither one of these 2 quarterbacks will be on this roster next year. If he brings in a transfer quarterback, I think it's safe to say that both Brock and Luke will be playing somewhere else next year if he goes the portal route. That's my opinion. It's just speculation. Nobody's told me that, but I just do not think that those 2 guys will come back if he brings in a portal quarterback. What do you got?
Here's what I think. I think the rebuilding is got to be so total and encompassing with the whole entire roster that you might as well stick with one of these 2 guys moving forward, unless you have a chance at a game-changing guy. Not a DJ Uiagalelei, a guy that is an elite quarterback, and that would be the only case where I could say, you know what, you might, if you got a chance to get that guy, you probably should get that guy. But because the entire roster needs to be revamped and trained and grow and, you know, and built back, you might as well build it back with these two guys and let them duke it out for the next 2 years.
Yeah, listen, he may bring in one, but I think if he does, both those other two kids are gone. Bob, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the transfer QB evaluation is so tough unless you've got some kind of prior relationship. Maybe you recruited that guy at some point in high school. I mean, we've seen programs really swing and hit big. NC State went Grayson McCall. That didn't work. You know, Florida State went DJU. That didn't work. I don't know if we have a great eval still of Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek.
No.
It's so tough. I've been preaching, hey, let's go to these games and watch player development. I've been preaching that for like more than a month. I don't know what I can take out of the North Carolina game. There's very, very little to say, oh, that guy, yes, there was an occasional really good pass. Like Pat, you mentioned the Brock Glenn throw to Malik Benson downfield. He took that big hit. You can take little moments out of those and say that's what a quarterback should look like. But I don't know if we can definitively transfer that and say that guy with a more consistent offensive line, with some receivers who can have some separation, with some better tight ends who can block. I don't know if we can say Luke or Brock are going to definitively be that guy next year. It's such a tough eval right now.
Well, my question is, everybody talks about, well, they need to bring in a portal quarterback. Nobody knows who the hell's in the portal unless they know something I don't.
Well, that's my point. Unless it's sure, you know, sure thing, you can't afford to miss, because you're right. If you lose one or both of those guys, so you better be sure that the guy's going to, you know, win you games for sure. But that goes to the bigger problem too, and I think it's a problem that, you know, when Mike was first hired, that was my one concern, was his ability to recruit at an elite level. You know, because he hasn't had to do it. You know, he's never been in an SEC school or a Florida State or someplace like where you're competing against the cream of the crop, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Alabamas. You know, and that's a totally different deal. And I think, you know, getting projects, getting a bunch of guys that, you know, we'll develop talent. You know, that's a little bit of hubris. You know, it's a little bit of, well, we'll get guys and we'll develop them. Yeah, you know what, you can miss on those evaluations too. You know,
well, that's kind of some of what happened.
100%. That's what we're dealing with now. You know, and the ability to procure talent and develop talent, but it's got to be elite talent. If we're going to compete at the levels we want to compete at, we got to recruit at a much higher level. We can't afford to be losing the KJ Boldens and, you know, and the Javion Hilsons and those guys. I mean, those are the guys that we need to close on. We need to get in the house. I mean, golly, how fun was it when, you know, the recruiting days when, you know, Coach Bowden was going into a house and you knew, you know, on signing day you were going to get 10 of the top 15 guys. You know, I mean, those days are so far gone. It's hard to remember what that was like. You know, because that used to be us, but yeah, that's what we got to get back to. That's the only, you know, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the, you know, Oregons. I mean, a lot of it has to do with NIL. I get that, but a lot of it has to do with relentless recruiting and building relationships and being able to close a deal. You know, because that'll buy you a little bit of a discount if you can do that, and your money go a lot further. But that to me needs to be a big focus. You know, if he's going to turn over the staff and replace some guys, that to me is the biggest failure. I go back to my first point. You know, their development and their evaluation of this team and what these guys can do was so far off. And it goes back to their recruiting. It goes back to how they evaluated some of these players when they signed them and brought them into the program. You know, I don't doubt their heart. I don't doubt their love for the program. You know.
Yep.
They're here. You know, I'm grateful that they came, but, you know, we got to do a better job.
Well, listen, we're getting a lot of comments about UNLV because we've had some people put on the board about the relationship between UNLV's offensive coordinator and Mike. Well, he played for Mike at Tulsa. We'll see what happens with that. Nobody knows whether that guy's coming or not. And here's the other thing. Everybody says, well, he's going to bring the quarterback with him. Quarterback's not eligibility. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. People want a portal quarterback, and the first guy they want is not even eligible to play next year. He's going to have to play in the NFL, or he's going to have to go to work somewhere. Listen, this guy's had one. I don't know the offensive coordinator's track record at UNLV, and they brought in a ton of kids with Barry Odom when Barry Odom in the portal. This is another portal built program.
Well, Pat, the reason there's so many retreads in the Southeastern Conference, you see guys popping in and out all the time, is because these guys have a track record of recruiting elite players. You get this guy from UNLV. Has he ever had to recruit in Florida, in Georgia, in Louisiana, in Alabama? Has he ever recruited in those areas? I mean,
yeah, we'll have to get Fish on here to answer that question because Fish knows him pretty well, I believe.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is either, but that's my point is that, there's a balance you got to strike between, coaching and recruiting. And I'm going to tell you, recruiting is the most important part. Okay. The coaching part is not that hard, honestly, but the recruiting part is the part. And I've said it here 100 times. And I've said this, when I first got into coaching, every coach that I talked to when I first started getting into coaching told me the same thing to a man. The very first thing they told me: good players make great coaches. Right? Good players make great coaches, and that's take care of your position. If you're coaching a position, don't rely on somebody else that's an area recruiter to recruit your position. Once you identify a guy, you take charge of it and you go get that guy. You get the guys that you want. And that's a big deal. I'm telling you, that's the only thing that really, if Mike's looking at, making changes, which we all assume he's probably going to do that. He's got to start there.
Just to humor this conversation on the guy from UNLV, the offensive coordinator. Was it Texas last year for one season? Was it Pitt before that for one season? Was it Hawaii before that for one season? Was it William and Mary before that for one season? Howard before that for two? Oklahoma Baptist, Arizona State, all the one-year stops outside of Howard. So, no, he's never recruited South. I mean, more than likely, unless they've got a relationship with a kid for some reason. And listen, we don't even know that there's going to be an offensive coordinator roles open here. Alex is on a 4-year contract. His contract
is 4. He's got a 4-year
contract. Does
not
expire till 2028. Isn't that correct, Bob?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's February because a lot of these contracts roll over in February, so it could be 27 or 28.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. So I think listen, and he was non-specific. I mean, listen, as somebody told me, Mike's making a lot of money. He's got guaranteed money from Florida State to a certain extent. Is he going to be forced to make changes that he does not want to make? I mean, we've heard him talk about the fact that they won 10 ball games in 2022 and 13 last year. And if he thinks those are the same coaches that led him to that success, I think changes will be minimal to the extent that he only has to make them. And then if he was seeing chinks in the armor, because he mentioned that he's been doing some of these evaluations for several seasons, then I think you might see more overhauling changes, but I don't think any of us exactly know what's going to happen there. Atkins is February 27th expiration, so 3 more years. So, but so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But listen, he's addressing them. He's getting asked. He didn't, I think people might have thought that he was going to get they were going to get more specific answers. I know that, there were a lot of people that wanted to see changes this week. I did not think that was going to happen. I know Kurt wrote about it that, they needed to be changes. I think that we know the changes are coming, and so does Mike, and so do some of these assistants. I don't think it's, so to go use the Jets as an analogy, when they fired Robert Saleh, they fired their best defensive coach. So if you're going to let a position coach go, the full-time on-the-field position coach go at any position at Florida State, during the course of the last 3 weeks of the season, is the guy that his analyst or GA, is he going to help? Is he going to make those players better for the 3 games that you got left? And the answer, based on what I see when I'm at practice, is no. You're not going to get better by letting Randy Shannon go and putting Ernie Sims on the field. You don't get any better. You don't. So I think that those changes are going to take place now. Now because they didn't happen today, people are talking, well, he's going to wait till open week to do it. So you're going to do it with 2 games left, and just like it didn't make any sense to do this week, they had 4 kids on campus. The last one didn't leave today. You know how you lose our prospect? Fire a coach while he's on his official visit. And that just shows that the program is in turmoil. So anyway, it's coming. We got the next 4 weeks to chew on this. I don't want to start, at some point we'll probably have to start taking some stronger opinions on who we think he needs to replace. I know other sites are doing that. I'm leery to do it because I've been fired from 2 college football staffs. It's not fun. And there are families involved in this, and I know it's professional. I know that it's what's expected when you don't win, and I've already said it's unexcusable to go what Florida State's going through, but I do not see any changes before the Sunday after Florida. What about you guys?
I think the other dynamic too is the calendar of December, when you've got that early signing period on December 4th. I mean, you're finishing up against Florida on, I think it's the 28th. You're going to be hosting official visitors through some point Sunday afternoon before that calendar goes dead. And you're trying to convince all those guys, hey, come to Tallahassee. The calendar goes dead. When can you logistically dismiss an assistant coach? But
there's not a good time anymore. There's not a good time.
The calendar doesn't work. It doesn't function for it. It's very, very complex. I think a lot of guys, honestly, a lot of prospects are going to sign on that Wednesday.
Yes.
And you said it earlier.
Mike Norvell.
If you lose an offensive coach, you've got Rick Stockstill in the wings that could fill in for 3 weeks.
Right.
I think his wife might let him do that. I don't know. And you got that. On the defensive side, I don't know who you have over there, but that would be the only scenario I would think that it could happen, is that if you threw Stock in there. But otherwise, no, I don't think. I think the natural time to do it is after the last game.
Yeah. And I do think the calendar, it makes it intriguing because, all right, so let's just say you got 4 offensive linemen, right? That's the only group you've got multiple players committed to. Do you play if Atkins is not going to return? Do you play that out till January or the portals close? I mean, do you wait till after National Signing Day, because there's a 3-day window? So you got December 4th, 5th, and 6th to sign that NIL. Well, it's not the National Letter of Intent anymore. I'll have to break myself with that. It's just a financial.
Here's the other thing too, Pat, is if you have your eye on a guy that you want to replace whatever coach with.
Yep.
Is that coach involved in bowls, playoffs, et cetera, right? So, that's the other thing. I mean, you don't want to leave that position open. You better have somebody ready to step in. Well, it's a complicated. You know what? That's why he gets paid $10 million.
That's right. That's right. That's why he's going to have the migraine headache over all this, and not us. All right, guys. Now listen, we try to keep Monday's show for an hour. We had some other things we're going to talk about. We're going to move forward to Notre Dame, but I know a lot of people that follow the program, including Bob, myself, and Mark, like to see what Mike has to say on Monday's night's edition of Inside Seminoles Football, which is getting ready to start momentarily down at Bowden's in College Town. So we'll wrap it up for the night. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with Fish and Nick. Nick's going to have a lot of updates on visits this weekend, both official and unofficial. We'll be back with, obviously, Fish will always bring an entertaining perspective. We'll talk a little bit about what he knows about the UNLV OC. because that is getting a lot of play over the last couple of weeks once that connection was made on the ESPN thing where they mentioned that he had learned a lot. Mike was the reason he was in coaching, all of that. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about recruiting. May have JP on the show. JP is always entertaining, and although I think he's kind of gotten apathetic towards the season as they are 1-8 at this point. But we do appreciate you watching and listening. If you want to see more of our takeaways from Mike's press conference, please go to theosceola.com. Obviously, Kurt's got his article on changes coming. We've also got an update on Justin Cryer. Quickly, we do not know what it is other than a lower leg injury, but it's not deemed to be as significant as they initially thought when they carted him off the field. Now, that does not mean he's going to be back this season. We know he's not going to be back for Notre Dame. Mike did make that fairly clear, although he is listed as a co-starter on the depth chart. So somebody did not want to use wideout in the sports information department. That's fine. And then, of course, we got live updates from the basketball game tonight. The Noles are kicking off right now, or tipping off their 2024-2025 basketball season right now. Nick's got a great article from FSU quarterback commit Tramel Jones that went out last night. You can check that out. Kurt talks a little bit about the 2 quarterback system. It has not worked, but neither has anything else. And I think at this point, what they're trying to do is just get these kids those 2 kids as many snaps as they can. And of course, we will have a video from Mike Norvell, Adam Fuller, John Papugis, and Alex Atkins press conferences today from the Moore Center. So please go to theosceola.com and check that out, or floridastate.rivals.com. That will take you to the same place. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification button so that you get updates when we do these shows live or taped. But we will be back Tuesday at 3, Thursday at 3, and then I know Mark's excited. 11 o'clock Saturday night, hell or high water, we'll be coming to tell you about whatever the hell happened in Notre Dame South Bend. And listen, in 2010, a very big, huge underdog University of South Florida team wandered up to South Bend and walked away with a 31-26 win. Some improbable things happened. Notre Dame's going in for the first touchdown of the game. They had a great team that year, Brian Kelly, and they fumbled on the goal line. Kayvon Webster took it back 99 yards. About 7.5 hours later, because of a 3-hour rain delay, the South Florida Bulls left Notre Dame with a victory. So anything can happen, as Mark said, and that's the reason we'll be watching and you'll be watching, and who knows? Hey, listen, Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame this year. Got to think we're better than Northern Illinois. So who knows? Football's a crazy business, but we'll be back
again Saturday.
We'll be back on Tuesday. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a great night. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Sully. You got to do your thing before you go.
All
right, there we go. There we go. I had to get the chop.
Right.
See ya.